Welcome to the Ad Nauseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, listeners, to episode 123. 123.
Yes, that's incredible.
Yes, of the Ad Nauseam podcast. My name is Dr. Jeff Winkle, and I am down here in the bunker, as always, with my good friend and co-host, Dr. David Noe. How you feeling today, Dave?
Yes, I'm feeling pretty well. So this is Vomitorium South, right?
It is, yeah.
We started out in the east, not in a basement, well, the basement of a dentist's office.
That's right, that's right.
We moved to Vomitorium West. We were in a Lutheran school, an elementary school.
Yep.
Now we're in Vomitorium South. There's only one place we haven't been.
And are you scheduling a move? Is there
No.
something behind this?
Breaking news.
Right.
There's no Vomitorium North.
No, but at some point I would like to hit all the cardinal
I think we
points.
should.
Yes, exactly.
Go right down the compass. I'm feeling great.
Yep.
So I've been occupied the last week in business ecclesiastical, and I was out of state a little bit, recovering from a cold, and I'm out of the woods on that, thankfully. But summer is here, and it's been great. So I'm feeling really well.
You're doing quite a bit of traveling lately, and so
it's going to pause for a long time, thankfully.
does it grind? It grinds me down.
Well, as I get older,
yeah, exactly.
It is less appealing. For some strange reason, I would rather sleep at home in my bed next to my wife than in some strange place.
I can understand that too.
Imagine that,
right? Right. Yeah.
But how are you doing, Jeff?
I'm feeling good. Yeah, I love the summer schedule. I had a couple of days this past week where I had to really think about, is it Tuesday?
Right.
Wednesday?
Oh, wow. You're starting to lose the days.
Exactly, right. Now, that means maybe some of our 9-to-5ers out there don't want to hear that. But
Probably not.
But
rub it in, will you?
When you have that kind of that educator's schedule, the summer days just kind of become kind of, they all kind of merge into each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, not unlike, I would say, the various interlaced connected stories in an Ovidian epic.
Wow, that was nicely done.
Was that nice?
I like that. So, we're talking about Ovid today.
We are. 2 more Ovidian vignettes. It's been a while, hasn't it?
It has. We've gone to this well a couple of times.
No, I think 3.
3 times now, yeah.
We talked about Atlas one time and some other stories. Deucalion and Pyrrha.
That's right.
What do you know was the title of that one.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. Yeah. So, I mean, Ovid the Metamorphosis is so rich.
Yes, more than 250 individual mythological stories.
Yeah, so we will definitely be coming back
Absolutely.
After this. But today we're going to talk about 2 of my particular favorites, the story of Arachne and the story of Midas.
That's correct.
Right. I would guess that probably our listeners, most of them probably could be able to, say, give me like a 3 sentences, tell me the story of Arachne or Midas. I think probably many of them would be able to do it.
I think so, for sure. Arachne is very familiar because of the spider. People have a fear, right? This arachnophobia. A lot of people have a fear of spiders. And of course, Midas with the golden touch.
Right.
That story was reprised by Nathaniel Hawthorne in the 19th century, reprised and expanded in his work. I think it's called Tanglewood Tales. Oh. And in the Tanglewood Tales, there's a daughter in the Midas story. And so I think that one, the Hawthorne version, is the one that has been adapted for cartoons and other things.
Where he touches his daughter, right?
Yes,
is that right?
Not in the Ovid version.
Right.
And yet I think Hawthorne is responsible for how popular that particular version is.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So, do we have an opening quote? Yes.
We have an opening quote.
But we don't have a shout out.
We don't have a shout out.
Okay. All right.
I think people are still listening. I mean, it's an open question, but they're generally not contacting us.
I think that people are. I think our listenership they're kind of humble.
You think so?
Yeah, they don't.
Unlike the hosts,
right? Exactly. Yeah, and so I don't want attention called to me,
right?
But
it's about the classics. It's not about me. You think that's what's driving this?
I think that's what it is. But so I want to just again gently urge the reader. We really want to celebrate you.
That's correct.
Right. So send us an email. Let us know who you are, what you're up to, and it doesn't have to do anything directly with classics.
No.
If you enjoyed the podcast, we want to hear about it, and we want to tell other people about you.
Right. We'll find a way to twist it into classical direction. Exactly. Don't worry. But the opening quote.
Yes.
You have this one. The author is Julia?
Julia Hayduk
That's
is
correct.
the author. And this is an article entitled Arachne's Attitude, Ovid's Metamorphoses 625.
So book 6.
Yep.
And what is it? line 25?
Yes.
Right.
And this is an article that goes back to 2012. And I thought this was kind of interesting, in particular because Ms. Hayduk makes a connection to the Aeneid.
Okay.
And
we spent enough time with that.
We did. And she's certainly not the first one to talk about the influence of Virgil's Aeneid on the Metamorphoses. I think it's largely undeniable.
Yes.
But I thought this was an interesting connection with the story specifically of Arachne.
Now, before you actually read the quote, Jeff, I would like to hear you trying to pronounce the name of the journal in which this was found.
Mnemosyne?
Yeah. Something like that. That's a tough one.
Mnemosyne.
It takes a lot of courage, I think, to give your journal a title that's really difficult to pronounce.
That's a journal that says, we basically don't care if anybody buys this.
Exactly. And this one, right? This is the, is she a nymph? Help me remember here. No, she's one of the muses, right? Whoa. I'm way off base here.
Okay.
No. She's the mother of the muses. She is a nymph who slept with Zeus. And by her, Zeus fathered the 9 muses.
That's right.
Okay. I have been traveling too much.
It is, man.
My mind is shaken apart.
Yes. All right. But so shall we launch into this?
Yes, let's hear it.
Okay. So the line in the Metamorphoses, Book 6, line 25, that Hayduk is wrestling with, is this one: "Certet ait me cum nihil est quod victe recusem." And this is where Arachne has been. As we'll talk about in the tale, people are saying, you're really good at this weaving stuff,
right.
but clearly you're influenced by Pallas, and you got to give give credit where it's due.
Yes,
and so this is the line where Arachne kind of, I don't know, it depends on how you read it, kind of snarkily responds.
I think so. That's how I've always read it.
Right, and so we'll get to a translation of it because Hayduk gives it, but she writes. Arachne's retort to the goddess, whose mastery she refuses to acknowledge, initiates a well-known series of events. Arachne ignores the warning of Minerva in disguise, wins the weaving contest, and is punished for her victory. All modern English translators understand the sentence to mean something like, "Let her compete with me. If defeated, there is no penalty I would refuse to pay." So that's Hayduk says. That's the way that line has been taken.
Okay.
I propose, she says, quite a different translation of the second clause. "There is no reason for me to refuse, defeated." That is, to admit defeat by refusing to compete. She says, this aligns better than the previous translation with allusions to Virgil's Turnus, with Arachne's situation and character, and with the irony of her story's conclusion. She goes on. In his memorable opening speech in Aeneid 12, which we just talked about a handful of episodes ago, right?
That's right.
Turnus, like Arachne, audaciously challenges an adversary whom divine backing makes invincible. And so now we get a couple of lines from the Aeneid. "Nulla mora in turno nihil est quod dica retractant, ignavi Aeneadae ne quae pepigere recusant congredior," which Hayduk translates as, "No delay in Turnus. There's no reason for the Trojans, spineless, to take back their words or refuse the terms they've negotiated. I'm fighting." So you remember this, where Turnus is kind of he's now kind of embracing his fate, or kind of giving into the role that he has to play.
Correct.
Right. So Hayduk continues, says this instance of nihil est quod plus the subjunctive clearly can mean only there is no reason why. The echo of nihil est quod dicta retractant in Ovid's nihil est quod victa recusam, with recusant appearing in Virgil's next line, makes it plausible to suppose that Ovid had the Virgilian passage in mind, especially if there are other links between Turnus and Arachne. In fact, such links, both at the verbal and thematic level, are so pervasive as to suggest that Virgil's doomed warrior is a primary model for Ovid's doomed artist.
Well, that's really interesting.
I thought it was interesting because that's something I'd never read or even thought about before. And so we don't have to dwell on it, but I thought if as we go through this tale, if other kind of connections between Arachne and Turnus kind of jump into my mind or your mind, that would be interesting to kind of expand upon.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I give her high marks for her linguistic or philological sensitivity. I really like these arguments where an echo or a resonance is noted between two authors.
Yeah.
Now, it's easy to over-argue their significance. Sometimes it's just a phrase that stimulates the imagination and there's not a deeper thematic connection.
Yeah.
But sometimes there is a deeper thematic connection, and it's definitely worth exploring.
Right. I remember making these kinds of observations or dealing with these kinds of arguments when I would teach the language classes.
Right.
And I thought a really good question, a legitimate question that would come up from the students often would, were these texts that well known? You know, in a world where very few people were literate,
Right.
Could people have heard that line of Ovid and say, "Oh, I recognize that from the Aeneid"?
Yes.
And the argument that I would often make towards saying, yes, indeed, is making an argument that in antiquity it was much more kind of a deeper kind of culture of memory
Right.
than we can possibly imagine today. Where all you have to do is pull out your phone and look anything up. We live in a culture that doesn't prize memorization.
Not at all. In fact, denigrates it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that it was just a different kind of landscape of memory, where I think that Ovid could do that, and someone who knew their Virgil would have recognized that.
Correct.
What do you think of that response?
Well, I think it's entirely possible that someone who knew Virgil could recognize an echo in Ovid. After all, this contemporary scholar, not a native Latin speaker, not immersed, was able to do so. So why couldn't an ancient? Right?
Sure.
But I think another answer, which is probably even better, is Ovid doesn't have to be sure that his audience would recognize the reference in order for him to make it and enjoy it.
Right.
Or for it to be persuasive, because the same thing that made Virgil's phrase memorable will make Ovid's phrase memorable, even if the audience doesn't realize it's ripped off of Virgil.
Right.
Here's an example. I was watching the great Coen brothers movie, Raising Arizona.
Yeah, one of my favorites.
Yes, I've seen it a few times. I watched it with a new audience several weeks ago. Many of the lines in that movie are taken from Shakespeare. There are a number of Shakespearean allusions and references. And why it's so funny is because they're spoken from the mouth of this ne'er-do-well, what's his name again? It's played by Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, I'm forgetting the character.
Is it High? I think it's
High. Yeah.
That's his name, right?
Yeah.
And if you know that they are Shakespearean lines, it's all the more enjoyable.
Right.
But the enjoyment is still there, even if you don't know.
Right. Exactly. It's just,
and the joke works.
The deeper levels of enjoyment, it's a reward to those in the know.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so the Coen brothers, I think, are partly writing for themselves.
Of course.
And while in one sense you can see that as kind of selfish, when done properly, it's the most enjoyable.
Yeah.
Right? Like when a painter includes in his portrait, some in his painting, some kind of reference to another painter.
Yes.
That's very satisfying when you notice that.
Yes, exactly. I love that kind of stuff.
Yes, I do too.
Right. And I don't find it. I know some might dismiss it as kind of game playing or just kind of showing off, like how literate one is, visually or verbally. But,
it can be that.
Yeah.
Ovid's certainly guilty of that sometimes, right? It's just an exercise in his geographical and mythological brilliance.
Exactly. Look what I can do.
Right. But we get to witness it because I can't do it. So
exactly. And then this kind of stuff from this article here, I don't see it as anything more than a tip of the hat.
Absolutely.
Right? He's not trying to outdo Virgil.
No.
Right? But I find it very persuasive that he's definitely tagging Virgil.
Yep. So we go into the setup then and the context of Arachne. Jeff, can you get us started with that?
I think I would like you to get us started with reading some Latin. How about that?
Okay, so which book are we in right now?
These are the very opening lines of book 6.
Okay, here we go. Praebu erat dictis Tritonia talibus aurdres. Carmina qua onedum justam que probaverat irdram. I slipped up there. Tum se cum laudardra parest laudemur et ipsae. Numina nex sperni sine poina nostra si namus.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
All right, now before I'm going to give a translation of those lines, what really struck me as I was reading a translation of the story was very often in my myth class, I'll talk about Arachne when I'm introducing Athena. And I'll reference the story and I'll give it maybe 5 minutes.
Okay.
As kind of an example. Now,
is that because it's so familiar
I think
already?
It's familiar, but it's also just it's a matter of there's so many other things I want to cover. And so, I'll give kind of this very kind of brief thumbnail sketch, and I say, well, yeah, this is a story about hubris, and there are lots of tales like this. So you do another kind of a few comparanda. And then I'll move on. But as I was reading the details of Ovid's version of the story, it's way more nuanced than just simply, human being hubristic, and here comes Nemesis, and they're punished for it. There's a lot more going on.
That's how I usually tell the story. Also, the way that you initially described is that I tell the story of Arachne when I'm going through the list of the 12 Olympians. Right?
Yeah.
So here's Athena. And here are the most familiar stories from Athena.
Yes.
Sourcing some from the tragedians, sourcing it from Ovid. And that's why I've always put Arachne in.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Yeah.
But maybe she deserves a little more time on stage for her own sake.
I think so. And so if you look at the very end of Book 5, we have Minerva's involved once again, although not directly. She's just witnessed a song contest between the Muses and the daughters of Pyrrhus, the Pyrrhides.
Right.
And Calliope steps up to represent the Muses, and the daughters of Pyrrhus, they sing a song.
Is this like American Idol? Is that what's going on?
It is kind of like that, exactly. So they step up, and their song they choose is one that's critical of the gods. It makes the gods look ridiculous. They lose the contest to Calliope, and they are turned into magpies. And so the story is framed that says, well, why are these daughters, why are they birds now? Well, let me tell you the story. I mean, it's a very common Ovidian conceit, right?
Yes, it's remarkable, as just a side note, how often persons are transformed into birds in the Metamorphoses.
Yes, it's true.
That was the most striking aspect to me when I first read the story.
Yeah.
Because we think of, I don't know, changed into mammals? That seems a little more natural.
Right.
But changed into birds?
Into birds, yes.
I once knew a child, a very small child, who said to me, this is going to give it away, Daddy, I don't like birds. And I said, why not? They don't have people faces.
I like that.
Isn't that astute?
It is astute.
Because when you look at a mammal, it's got a roughly people face.
It does. It's true.
Right? A dog has a roughly person face.
Interesting. My wife would love to hear that story. She has, what would it be? Aviophobia?
Yeah, ornithophobia.
Ornithophobia. She has always been very leery of birds.
I can understand
and I wonder,
that.
is it because they don't have people
They
faces?
don't have people faces.
They're creepy.
Yes, and don't forget their lineage. People tell us they were once dinosaurs.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if that's true, but I'm just waiting for one of them to, tear into me.
Go pterodactyl on you?
Exactly. you can't really trust a bird.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Anyway.
All right. So I thought this was interesting because whenever I tell the story of Arachne, I never consider what came before and what came after in the book.
It's just dropped down in there as the story of Athena.
Right. So Minerva has already heard this story, which is very similar to Arachne. Arachne, as we'll see, she doesn't sing a song that's critical of the gods, but she weaves pictures right, that are critical of the gods. And so the story starts, these lines that you just read in Latin, I thought this was interesting as kind of a setup to the story. And so this is A.S. Klein's translation of this, who has a wonderful translation of the Minerva you can find on the internet. Klein writes, Tritonian Minerva had listened to every word and approved of the Aeonian muses' song and their justified indignation. And then she said to herself, to give praise is not enough. Let me be praised as well, and not allow my divine powers to be scorned without inflicting punishment. So I just thought this was interesting, is that Minerva, before the whole Arachne thing starts, she's kind of primed to
take offense.
Right? And so
she's got a chip on her shoulder,
yes.
we would say.
And I thought that casts. I mean, you can always do. You can always make too much of these kinds of things, right? I think I'm going to be interested to hear what you kind of think, what you think the story is really all about.
Yeah. Well, first I'm disturbed by that expression.
What?
A chip on her shoulder.
You don't like that expression?
Well, where did that come from?
I don't know. Where does
she
that
was
come
going through the nacho bar and didn't quite make it out.
Too a little aggressive.
A little too aggressive, and now she's got a chip on her shoulder.
Right, and she's mad because she didn't get to eat all the nachos.
I don't know what it is.
Very interesting.
But it means quick to take offense.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Having a light trigger. Right.
Yes.
Going off too easily.
Yeah. Exactly. So she doesn't come in, and so as I realize when I've kind of told the thumbnail version of the Arachne story, I don't present it with, Minerva was, she just came in all innocent, right?
Yes,
and how dare this young lady, right? But
I've told it that way too, and I wonder why.
I don't know either. But if you read Ovid, it's in many ways it's very sympathetic to Arachne.
Yes, it is.
And it's set up with kind of Minerva as this hothead, just ready to go.
I have a theory.
Yeah.
It could be that as Christians, we are inappropriately inclined to give the deity the benefit of the doubt. Because we are so accustomed to thinking of our God as the just and righteous and merciful person that He is,
right?
But that is not how Ovid saw the Greco-Roman gods,
right?
So they were often villains and villainesses in this story.
Yes.
So maybe that kind of shaded my perspective a little bit. Whereas I should have been paying more attention. Athena is really looking to be offended, and Arachne was in some ways entrapped.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's very well said. I find that, like when I teach Homer, and I think even many of my students, most of my students, don't come from any kind of religious tradition, but they come with kind of this assumption that, well, whatever the gods want must be quote unquote moral.
Correct.
Right? They see the gods as kind of that they're the foundation stone for what should or should not be done.
That's once again an inheritance of Platonism
Yes.
and Christianity.
Exactly right. But in Homer and Ovid,
Nope.
no, it's not there. All right, so Minerva, she's primed for judgment. She's ready. She's got that big old nacho on her shoulder, right? And so just that in and of itself, it raised these questions, which I think are so interesting. So what are we to ultimately make of these stories where the humans consistently paint the gods as unjust? I think there's a lot in this story that you can see that, okay, maybe she steps over the line here, but what about all this other stuff?
But the way she steps over the line is trying to be the best weaver.
Yes.
And weaving a tapestry that's a little bit salacious.
It's true. I think that
But how objectionable is that?
And then, but you could, I think you would, it strikes me that, when she falls into this contest, like today we would say, that's entrapment, right? So did she really know what she was getting into?
Right.
And so and I realized when I tell the story, when Arachne agrees to this contest, I always tell that, well, she knows exactly who she's dealing with.
Right.
She doesn't care that it's Minerva, and she does it anyway. And that's not really what's in the story.
Right.
So,
to contextualize it, let's say, I'm trying to refrain from eating unhealthy things.
yes.
But someone puts in front of me a big plate of Doritos, smothered in Velveeta and American cheese.
Right.
With a side of guacamole and sour cream.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. What are you going to do?
What am I going to do? Is that really fair?
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly right. No, I think that's right on here. So when Arachne's introduced, we learn that she comes from a poor family. She doesn't have kind of a strong heroic family legacy. Her mother has been long dead.
See, this is what to me is interesting about Arachne, is that she could not be a candidate for a tragedy. I don't think you would find her, now, I could well be wrong, and I may be forgetting a Sophoclean tragedy entitled Arachne, but what distinguishes the characters in those tales is that they are nobility. They are themselves descended from the gods.
Yes.
They're not nobodies, commoners like Arachne.
Right, exactly.
So that should kind of provoke some sympathy from us from the start.
I think so too, right? And it also kind of falls into kind of a broad comic construct, right? It reminds me of, describing Arachne as, well, you could describe Eumaeus in a similar kind of way. The fact that they're poor and humble.
This is the swineherd from books 14, 13, and 14 and following of the Odyssey.
The Odyssey, right? And so there's that kind of that broad comic conceit that where do you find the salt of the earth? It's amongst the poor, right? She's not a tragic heroine. She doesn't have kind of a position of status that she needs to fall from, right? And so she comes from a very humble household. Her father is a weaver as well, and she's slowly making a name for herself through her skill. But she's not out there trumpeting, "Look how great I am!"
Right.
And so I thought, okay, that's a setup that I do not give when I tell that story from memory.
Now she's making scarves and napkins and teapot cozies and so forth. She's got an Etsy store, probably.
Exactly.
Maybe she went door to door selling pot holders at the beginning, but she's making good now.
Right. Yeah,
She's just a humble girl.
Exactly. Right. And so we learn that the people, the townspeople, they marvel at her skill, and they say, well, clearly she's been taught by Pallas, is the line. And so I thought there was a lot of stuff in this passage that I thought, because how do I interpret this, right? Because everything that Ovid gives us suggests that, well, no, not literally, she's not been taught by Pallas.
Right.
Or could you say that just anybody who's good at weaving is taught by Pallas?
I think that's the convention.
Is that the convention?
And if you're especially good at something, you must have divine guidance.
Okay. But it was, from a literal point of view, Arachne's saying, no, she didn't teach me anything. But I guess she's not recognizing, she's good at weaving, so you have to kind of, tip the hat to the goddess.
You have to.
You have to. Right?
So I think the NBA Finals concluded recently. I don't know. Is that true?
I haven't been following it. I think.
Okay, but there was some basketballing
There
recently.
was definitely some basketballing. Yes.
And if someone was really great, that you might say, "Wow, that guy's another Jordan."
Yes.
Right? Or he's the son of Jordan, or
right.
he's he's breathing the Jordan inspiration, something like that.
Yeah.
Whether or not he ever really had any contact, with the supposed GOAT.
Right.
That's the connection.
Right. You recognize the shoulders of the giants that you're standing on. Right.
So can I read a little bit of the Ambrose translation?
Yes, please.
This is the Focus Classical Library, and this is the Z. Philip Ambrose by Hackett, by the way, cough, cough. So, With this, she, meaning Minerva, turned her attention to Maeonian Arachne's fate, who in the art of working wool she had heard would not cede pride of praise to her. In neither status nor family origin lay her fame, but in her art. Her father was Idmon of Colophon, who dyed with Phocian purple the spongy wool. Her mother had died, a woman herself of humble folk, just like her husband, but the girl had, through the Lydian towns, acquired a memorable name for herself, even though she lived in little Hippaipa and came from a simple home. In order to see her admirable work, Timolus's nymphs often left their olive groves. The nymphs of Pactolus often left their stream. The joy was not only in looking at the cloth she wove, but also at how she made it. So great was the grace of her art in rolling the raw wool first into balls, or shaping the mass with her fingers and softening the wool by adding more and repeatedly stretching it to look like clouds, or turning the rounded spindle with her lightly moving thumb, or adding designs with her needle. Taught by Pallas, you might suppose.
You might suppose.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Nice. I like that translation.
That's
It's been a while since I've looked at the M.
Yeah. It's a little different than Lombardo. It's not quite as, I would say, terse and rapid. I would say it's a more expansive translation.
Right.
But very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, good. And so it's when the townspeople start to kind of say, "Hey, listen, you got to give credit where credit's due." Mm-hmm. This is where we get the line from our opening quote, where Klein translates as, Arachne says, "Well, contend with me, like bring it on.
Right.
I will not disagree at all if I am beaten."
Right.
Right. And it even struck me that is Arachne like directly challenging the goddess there?
Is that hubris?
Or is she just saying, "Hey, if anybody's better, show me, and I will happily concede defeat to anyone who can do this better"?
But is it conceivable that she could be better at anything than Minerva?
I guess what I'm asking is that is she even talking about Minerva there? It just seemed
It's in the context of when people say she was taught by Pallas.
I guess so.
So maybe.
Right. Okay. All right. I'll grant that. I'm not going to try to make some kind of modernist reading of this.
Right.
Arachne is this.
As you did with the end of the Aeneid.
Oh, did I do that?
Oh, you were revising all over the landscape.
Really? It was just kind of. I was scatting and bebopping all over the place.
Yes, you were. Jeff, revisionist Winkle.
I'm not going to go there
Okay.
here.
All right.
So anyways, so Pallas, Minerva comes down. She disguises herself as an old woman. Mm-hmm. There's lots of stories in Ovid that where the gods do this kind of thing, right? And she encourages Arachne. Says, "Yes, you're very good at that, and and follow this. Clearly you've got some skill here." But she also says, "Don't forget who's the goddess of this."
Right.
And it says, "Ask for forgiveness, and she will grant it." Mm-hmm. And I just thought this was interesting. Thinking about the way that I usually tell this story is that Arachne does not know that this old woman is the goddess.
Right.
And so I think that's at the very least a small mitigating factor in this, right?
So now you're a musician, right? A guitarist, piano, etc. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if any of your sons are interested in music.
They are. Yeah.
Okay. And you've probably even cultivated that interest and encouraged them and helped them to the extent that they like.
Yes.
If one of them started to get really good, right, and wasn't quite at your skill level, but thought that he was, right? Hey, Dad, can you play this? And then you might feel some urge to kind of put him in his place a little bit, because you spent how many years perfecting your craft?
Yes.
Right? But there would come a time probably where you would be genuinely happy that he had outshone you.
Yes.
But not quite yet.
Right.
He's got to actually prove it.
Yes. Okay.
I just wonder if that kind of dynamic is at work in Athena, Minerva, at all.
Yeah.
I don't think she would be genuinely happy to be bested.
No.
And
I think even in Ovid's version here, you could make the argument that she is bested and she's not happy about
that's
it. Right?
right.
Right? Exactly. No, I like that analogy a lot. Right. So, all I'm saying is that in reading this version carefully and in detail, there was a lot of stuff there that I thought, brought a lot of my sympathies around to Arachne more so than in the way that I usually tell the story.
I agree with that completely, because I think we have told it from the same perspective in the past.
Yes. So here I'll give Klein's translation of what follows. So again, Minerva as the old woman says, "Hey, ask for forgiveness, and the goddess she'll be okay with this."
Okay.
So Arachne looked fiercely at her and left the work she was on, scarcely restraining her hands, and with dark anger in her face. Pallas, disguised, it is true, received this answer: Weak-minded and worn out by tedious old age, you come here, and having lived too long, destroys you. Let your daughter-in-law, if you have one, let your daughter, if you have one, listen to your voice. I have wisdom enough of my own. You think your advice is never heeded? That's my feeling too. Why does she not come herself? Why does she shirk this contest? Okay, so now she's starting to...
She's demonstrating some actual hubris.
Right.
She doesn't know. This is why Klein says, disguised it is true. She doesn't know she's speaking to Minerva directly.
Right.
But she is.
She is. Exactly right. In the grand scheme of things, in relationships between the gods and humans, it doesn't matter if you know who you're talking to or not. This is crossing a line.
Right. So since I seem to be the pop culture guy today, I'm the Johnny Pop.
Yeah, big time.
Joey Pop.
I'm enjoying it. Yes.
All right. Have you ever seen the reality TV show Undercover Boss?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Some of those are pretty funny. That's what you got here, right? Arachne shows up, right, at the sock weaving store.
Right.
Not Arachne, Athena, Minerva.
Yeah.
And there's one of the employees, right, complaining about the boss.
Yes.
To the boss.
Yes, exactly.
And, it's comic, the way that the show works. Here it's tragic.
Right.
Because Minerva has no grace.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah. That's the... You just described the seeds of a great parody.
Yeah.
So wouldn't that be? But you're right. So Minerva is the undercover boss here.
Right.
And the employee is just letting the boss have it.
That's correct.
Without knowing who they're talking to.
You think your advice is never heeded? That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Why doesn't she come here herself?
Yeah. Come on. Right. Okay. So the hammer's about to drop.
That's right.
All right. So then Minerva reveals herself. And then so then Arachne... you can't take those words back, right?
No.
She has no choice but to kind of, we're going to throw it down.
Yep.
And so Minerva goes first, and she's weaving, and what she weaves are pictures of the gods as foundations of civilization and justice and goodness and order. And
highly selective retelling.
Yes, exactly.
Of divine history.
Yes, right.
Do you want me to read some lines?
How about a little more Latin here? This this is a line 70 through 75.
Yeah, so book 6. Kekropia palas scapulum vortis in arca, pinget et antiquam de terrae nominalitem, bis sex caelestes medio sedibus altis, Augusta gravitatis sedent sua quemque deordrum, inscribit facies vis est regalis imago.
Nice. All right, let me give Ambrose's translation of those lines in a little bit more. Kekropian Palace depicts the rock on the hill of Mars, as well as the ancient dispute about the name of the land. With Jove in the middle, twice 6 celestial beings with solemn mien are seated on their lofty thrones. Each face is inscribed to show which god it is. Royalty is seen in the image of Jove. She makes the god of the sea stand with his long trident strike the rugged rocks, and out of the midst of the blow to the rock, a spring has sprung forth, a pledge with which he would claim the town. But to herself she gives the shield, gives the sharp-cussed spear, the helmet for her head, defends with the aegis her breast, and shows the earth smitten by the cusp of her spear, bringing forth the shoot of the olive tree, graying with fruit, and marveling gods and victory at the end of her work. So she shows some distinctly Athenian themes.
Yes,
right? So
her contest with Poseidon.
Yep, and the establishment of the Areopagus.
Yes,
as a court. And then, of course, herself as kind of an image of with the gift of the olive, bringing civilization to the people of Athens. It's all very, as you say, very selective and very positive.
Yes. Like most autobiographies, right?
Yeah.
When you write your autobiography, The Winkle Years.
Yes.
What's going to be in there?
Well, it's going to be warts and all.
Really?
Yes, exactly.
Nobody wants to read that.
Yeah. Well, no, you do.
You have actual warts, like on your feet or something? You're going to include photos of that? You know how most books have a part in the center where there are photos?
Yeah.
Right? We're going to turn to that, and it's going to be photos of your warts?
Yeah, they'll be black and white. They'll take some of the edge off. Right. But no,
I want to see that.
Since you brought it up,
yeah.
Right? I was reading a biography that was highly recommended to me because of my interest in music and pop music.
Yes.
And this is the autobiography do you know who Dave Grohl is?
I do.
He was the drummer for Nirvana. Now he's the Foo Fighters guy.
Yes, he came on after music had died in 92-ish, 93-ish.
Yes, right. Okay, gotcha. Right. So let's see how you feel about Mr. Grohl. Okay. Well, I'm a fan.
Okay.
I like him very much as a musician and as a personality. So
he Grohls on you after a while?
Exactly. Right. So I was very much looking forward to it. And I know a lot about his life just from stuff I've read. And I was
been peeping in the windows, so to speak, for a couple decades.
So I was looking forward to kind of having his take on some of these seminal events in his life. And most of these events where it gets ugly and tragic, he glosses over in a sentence or two, and then it's on to look how many famous people I know. Oh, I can't believe I'm hanging out with AC/DC.
Right.
I'm at the White House. And it was so boring.
Here I am at the beach.
Look at that. Oh, is that Paul McCartney? Oh, we're just hanging out.
Did you get your money back?
I got it from the library. I'm glad I did not buy the book. But I thought, I don't want to. This is no good. When I read an autobiography, I want the warts.
You want the dirt.
I want the dirt. You know, lay yourself bare. Right. So
Athena doesn't do that.
No, she does
to
not.
bring it back.
No,
it's all a very rosy
exactly.
retelling.
It's very much like Grohl's autobiography
of Athena and her wonders.
Right. Now, Arachne's work is also selective, but
yes.
in the other direction.
Now, this is where I think she shows either tremendous courage or tremendous foolishness. Right. And I have this feeling that we have talked about this a little bit before somewhere on the podcast. We've never devoted a whole episode to Arachne, have we?
No. Yeah.
Gasp.
Yes.
But I think we've talked about
I'm
this.
sure she's come up somewhere. Because we've talked about these themes before.
Of course,
right?
this is not the deadly wish.
This is hubris-meets-nemesis.
Hubris-meets-nemesis.
Right. But I mean, there's part of it, like, it's almost like Arachne says, well, I realize that when Minerva reveals herself, she probably thinks, I'm done for. So why not just go all in?
Go out with a bang.
Exactly right.
Right.
It's like in Seinfeld when Costanza, getting fired, he says, I want people to say that guy got canned.
Right. So Minerva's going to give a selective retelling. Here is the expose.
Right.
Here's the truth.
Yes, and it is phenomenal how condensed this is. And
I'm just going to ask. So, are you going to write the real story of Dave Grohl and pick out those spots and just put all the dirt in there?
Somebody has to.
Okay.
All right. It's
not going to be you.
It's not going to be me. But that's a project waiting to happen.
Okay.
Right. So Ovid he devotes 24 lines to Arachne's tapestry. And in those 24 lines, he describes 21 acts of rape. Jupiter, 9 acts. Neptune, 6 acts. Apollo 4, Bacchus 1, and Saturn 1. And which I think is a really striking retort to is, remember, Athena, she wove something about Jupiter, about Neptune, and herself.
Yes.
And so
paragons of virtue and order,
right,
blessing mortals and bringing them peace and happiness.
Right, exactly. So I think that Arachne's response is, well, look at what Jupiter's done 9 times. Look what Neptune's done 6 times. And I think Apollo is kind of a masculine stand-in for Athena, god of the city, right? And if she's going to keep it to the theme of sexual violence, these are going to be male figures, right?
Yep.
And then Bacchus once and Saturn once. It's not just describing these detestable acts of the gods. It's a direct response, or the other side of the coin of what Minerva has just woven.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she weaves it in real time.
Yeah.
Which is impressive.
Very impressive.
And I don't understand much about tapestries or much about anything, but the little that I do understand is that when you weave a tapestry, you have to have a couple of threads at the beginning, but the whole picture, you've got to introduce threads whose presence in the picture won't be obvious until you get to the end.
Yeah.
So there's a tremendous amount of foresight.
Yes, exactly.
That is required in putting something like this together.
It boggles the mind how anybody could do that.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
I'm boggled.
Yep.
Not raccoed, but boggled.
Right.
And as the picture emerges, you can imagine how Minerva is responding, right? Because it slowly emerges like a Polaroid.
Yes.
That's slowly...
You're shaking it.
Exactly.
Right.
And when you see what's there...
Oh, my goodness.
Boy, she's upset.
She's horrified. But Ovid tells us that even when it's done, even Minerva herself can't deny this is the brilliance of the work. I don't think Ovid comes out and says basically Arachne's tapestry was more skilled, but I think it's deeply implied. Mm-hmm. And so Minerva's kind of she's stunned by it.
So there's a note here that you wrote that Arachne's world is chaotic, unpredictable, and chaotic.
Yes, yeah. So it again as a counterbalance to the ordered, just world that Minerva has shown. So not only is it a retort in terms of the characters, the figures that she mentions, but the world that she depicts is one of violence and disorder. And in some ways, she's kind of foreshadowing what's about to happen to herself as well, right? So Minerva can't deny that Arachne has produced something brilliant, but that doesn't stop her from picking it up and tearing it in half And this is a detail that I'd forgotten about, is that she grabs the shuttle off the loom and actually beats Arachne over the head with it 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, it's a heavy piece of wood.
Yes.
In fact, it's I was looking for it here in the Latin. It's boxwood, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I'm looking for the Latin. I may not be able to find it in time. But boxwood is what chess pieces are made of.
Is that right?
Yeah, they're very heavy, extraordinarily dense.
Okay.
So to get hit with a piece of boxwood is just awful.
It's a serious weapon.
Exactly.
Right. And this is where Arachne breaks, and she's so distraught that she attempts to kill herself. She fashions a noose, and she's about to hang herself. Ovid tells us that Minerva stops her out of pity, and then using some magic borrowed from Hecate, this is where she famously sprinkles it on Arachne. This is where she turns into a spider. And so we have, again, part of the function of the story. It's an aetiology, right? It's why do spiders weave webs? Well, it goes back to the the best of all human weavers, and Minerva says, "Okay, go. You can live. You can go on weaving, but don't you dare, any of your descendants, don't you dare make this mistake again."
Right. Live, girl, live, and hang.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Hang forever.
Yes. Exactly. Right. And so I think definitely the story is another one of these textbook. Yes, human being crosses the line. Hubris meets nemesis, and it ends in this very kind of clever. Etiological kind of way. But it made me wonder, is that, is Ovid coming down on a particular side? Is he saying, on the one hand, yes, the gods are powerful and they deserve our due, but on the other hand, they can be really horrible too. And those things just kind of hang there together.
Yes.
It's not like one side is right and the other side is wrong.
That's what I think he's saying.
Okay.
And I think I've made the claim before in previous episodes, and I think I can defend it, that unlike Virgil, Ovid is going back to, and I think actually Brooks Otis supports this idea, Ovid is going back to an Homeric viewpoint. Not a moral, civilized world that Virgil is representing, where Jupiter and Juno finally reconcile and they behave as virtuous imposers of a moral order.
Right.
No, Ovid's going right back to Homer.
Yeah.
But it's for comedy.
Yes. And I wonder if this is one of those things that irritated Augustus about Ovid. I mean, this is part of Augustus' kind of moral program that he's trying to institute. I mean, you don't see anything of that notion of the pax deorum, right?
No.
The gods in balance and therefore humans in balance. It's quite the opposite.
That's right. And speaking of humans in balance,
yes,
it's time for the ads.
Let's do it. This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by Ratio Coffee. Dave, I'm very excited.
Let me know why.
Because this morning I got an email saying that my Ratio order has shipped.
Oh, right.
And this is...
What's coming?
The hulking carafe.
The flagon?
The flagon.
Wow.
Right.
What is this going to do?
It's a game changer.
Okay.
Right? So for many months now, I've had the Ratio 8, this wonderful machine.
The bigger brother of the 6?
Yes. And I've had the hand-blown glass carafe, which is a beautiful work of art. I've talked about how much I love just kind of
the way it pours.
The way it pours is brilliant. But it's also, you have to drink it right away.
Well, it's not designed to keep the coffee hot.
No,
it's designed as a beautiful way to serve the coffee.
To serve the coffee, right, exactly. And so often in the mornings, I am an early bird. I get up very, very early. And my wife,
with a people face.
With a people face, exactly. Right. And my wife sleeps in a little bit more. We both love coffee. But I don't like making, 2 pots. It's kind of a pain. Right. And so I often find myself very impatient because I'm waiting for my wife to wake up.
Come on, wake up, drink the coffee.
However, when this carafe arrives,
it's going to change
everything because I had one of these carafes when I had the 6, and it's astounding how long this keeps the coffee warm.
Yep.
And there's no radiating heat pad. No scorching from below.
No Kindle brick.
No, it's just the incredible insulation of this thing that can keep it warm for hours.
Yes. Now I have had my hulking flagon, the carafe, with the double insulated walls.
Yes.
For at least a couple of years now, and I have been brewing directly into that.
Yeah.
So I don't brew into the borosilicate glass.
Do you have one?
Carafe, which
you have the glass carafe?
Well, I don't anymore.
Oh, you don't?
Because I broke it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was an accident. Now you made me speak about it
sorry.
on air.
Okay, let's get past it.
In fact, I broke 2 of them. Now, they're very sturdy.
Yes.
But I'm just very clumsy, so there you go.
Okay. Gotcha.
Anyway, hulking flagon.
Yeah.
put that in there. As you used to like to say, you can store plutonium in it.
Totally.
And carry it around the neighborhood.
Yeah, it's true.
It keeps the coffee warm for a very long time. The cleanup is easy, right? It's very, very simple.
Yeah. So I can't wait for this thing to arrive. I'm going to be watching. I got my tracking number. And I'll be
every 5 minutes.
Every
track.
5 minutes.
Track.
Exactly. Yeah, right. I can't wait. I love my machine. Every morning, the perfect cup of coffee.
Now, these are not cheap machines.
These are not.
I do say they're inexpensive if you compare the cost to the value.
Yes.
They're still inexpensive because they will last virtually forever.
Right. It's true. These are things that you could pass down to your children if you so wanted.
Right.
Yep.
But first you have to get one.
Yep.
And how does our listener do that?
They do that by going to ratiocoffee.com. That's RATIO coffee.com. You find the machine you want, the 8 or the little brother, the 6, and you type in this coupon code, ANCOA6.
Yes, what does the A stand for?
Accessible?
Yes.
Is that what it was? Okay.
Because it's just a one-touch button.
It is a one-touch button.
And then you got bloom, brew, ready.
Ready. That's all there is to it. So check it out.
Yes. This episode is also brought to you by Hackett Publishing. Hackett, with offices in Indianapolis, Indiana, and
Cambridge, Massachusetts,
have been offering high-quality, affordable translations to the reading public for now 50...
I think it's 51 years,
51 years.
Yes. It's incredible. Yep.
They have a tremendous catalog of all things classical and things not classical. For example...
Well, looking through their catalog, I've seen things on Islamic history. I've seen things on all kinds of philosophies, not just ancient philosophy, but the philosophy of the ages.
Right.
All kinds of collections. One of the things that I love about Hackett, you can find translation of the same works by different translators.
Yes, we have here with us today in the studio a translation of Ovid's Metamorphoses by
the great Stanley Lombardo and also by Philip Ambrose.
That's correct.
And so you'll be hearing from the Lombardo translation in the next segment. I can't say enough about these guys. I mean, they would like Arachne,
right?
They're very humble about the way they go about business. They don't toot their own horn, but they have tremendous skill in kind of threading that needle between high quality work and being very, very affordable.
That's correct.
They don't, unlike Arachne, they do not cross the line just into bald-faced hubris.
Into actual hubris, right? I've had the privilege of teaching philosophy a couple times at a former institution, and always teach a little segment on Descartes. So that thin little volume published by Hackett, it's kind of a aquamarine-ish color, right?
Yeah.
High quality translation and very affordable. So there's no reason not to purchase something like that.
So if our audience is interested, Dave, what should they do?
They should go to Hackett Publishing, HACKETT, HackettPublishing.com, or get your AI bot to do it for you, right?
They can do that now?
I don't know.
They can order your books for you?
There's a lot of tasks I'd like to unload.
Gotcha.
Right? And browse the catalog or have your AI bot do it. And when it comes time to place your order, you need to drop a coupon code into the little grocery basket spot. What is that code?
That code is AN2023.
And what will that get them, Jeff?
That will get them two wonderful things. Get them 20% off their entire order.
Really?
And also free shipping.
Check it out. All right, Jeff, as we get back into it, the next part of the episode, we're going to shift gears or grind gears. We're going to move away from the contest between Arachne and Athena, wherein the motif is hubris versus
nemesis,
and move on to Midas, which we could describe as discussing what kind of motif.
It would be the deadly wish,
right?
Or sometimes I describe it like the be careful what you wish for because you just might get it motif, which is all over Greek myth.
Yes. Yeah. So some other notable examples from this story are Phaethon, right?
Yes.
Let me drive the chariot of the sun, Dad.
Right.
And be careful what you wish for.
Right. Or Semele. Wanting to see Zeus in his true form.
Oh, yes. And when that happens, she is incinerated.
Yes.
Burnt to a crisp.
Right. There's the other, I'm forgetting the name of her. She her wish for eternal life is granted, but she forgets to kind of mention that she wants that coupled with eternal youth.
Oh, it's Aurora wishing this for Tithonus.
That's it. Yes, exactly.
The Trojan prince who becomes the grasshopper.
Right.
So let him live forever, but she forgets to add, but don't let him age.
Right. And so he just shrivels and shrivels and shrivels.
Correct.
Right.
And then in pity, he's turned into a grasshopper. But those are stories for another episode of Vignettes.
Exactly.
Today we're dealing with
King Midas.
With King Midas. Now the setup is that he happens to rescue for Bacchus someone who's very dear to Bacchus, the only father figure. Wow, I messed. Fogger figure that Bacchus has ever had, which is
Silenus.
Silenus. Now, Silenus or the Sileni, these are odd characters.
These are kind of these kind of drunken satyrs. That,
they're kind of like Santa Claus, right? Because they're old and bearded.
Yes.
But their jolliness comes from imbibing way too much alcohol.
Yes.
And they're lecherous and dangerous.
Right. And so, if you're a woman in particular, take care if you wander into the woods.
That's correct. They're very dangerous.
They'll chase you. Yes.
Right. But somehow Silenus here, he's picked out from among the group, I guess, and he's very much loved by Bacchus as a substitute father. Mm-hmm. And he gets lost. And when he's lost, Midas somehow finds him. I don't know if he's putting up posters on telephone poles or, if he recruits John Walsh.
Oh, right. What was his thing?
America's Most Wanted.
Yes, of course. Right.
But somehow Midas succeeds in reuniting Silenus and Bacchus.
Okay.
As a reward, he's given his one wish. And his one wish, so we're just going to outline the story, is to have a golden touch.
Yes.
Seems like, a good thing to ask for. Everything you touch turns to gold.
Right. But perhaps not really thinking everything through.
What are the candidates? What are the alternatives? Everything you touch turns to chocolate?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that wouldn't be bad. That would get old really quickly, though.
I think so, too.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, does Ovid preface this at all by saying, like, Midas was known for his greed or anything like that, or just this kind of comes out of nowhere? Or
well, he was already very wealthy.
Okay.
And so there's some kind of avarice lurking in his heart.
Gotcha.
But this has been the dream of all kings, right? Is the kind of alchemy to be able to turn any substance into gold. This is
right.
What's the guy who spins the straw with the girl with the long hair?
Rumpelstiltskin, yes, exactly. Okay.
Same kind of idea.
Gotcha.
So I think we should start, as we tell this story, with a little bit of the Latin, and then maybe you can read to us some of the Lombardo translation.
Let's do it.
So this is from Book 11, lines 85 and following. I'm going to read a little bit of the Latin. Nex adas hoc bacest ipsos quoque deserer agros, cumque curo meliora sui veneta temoli, pacto lanque petitquam vis non ardres illo, tempora nec cardris erat invidiosus harenis. Hunc ad suete cohors satiri bacaeque frequentant, at silenus abest, titubantaninisque meroque. Ruricolae capere friges vinctumque coronis, ad regem duxere medan qui Thracius Orpheus. There we have the name Midas right there. And the last one, orgia tradiderat cumque cropia el molpo.
All right. Let me give us Lombardo's translation of these lines. But not even this was enough for Bacchus. He left those fields with a worthier retinue, and made for the vineyards near his own waters, the Tmolus River and the Pactolus, although the latter was not yet a golden stream, envied for his precious sand. So here's Ovid kind of showing off some of his geographical knowledge. Right?
Yes, and foreshadowing too, right?
Yes.
It was not yet envied for its golden stream.
Right. His usual crew, satyrs and bacchantes, were with him in droves, but Silenus was not there. Some Phrygian peasants had captured him while he was stumbling along under the influence of old age and wine. They bound him with wreaths and led him to Midas.
Deadly combination, right?
Yes.
Old age and wine.
Yeah, look out. Led them to Midas, their king, whom Thracius Orpheus had taught, along with Eumolpus, the rituals of Bacchus. All right, okay.
So that's the setup,
yes.
Right? That's the setup. This is how Midas succeeds in rescuing Silenus and restoring him to Bacchus, his adoptive son, or foster son.
Exactly. All right, more Lombardo here. When the 11th dawn banished the ranking stars, the king rode merrily to the Lydian fields and gave Silenus back to the youthful god who was once his ward. Bacchus was happy to have his foster father back, and as a reward granted Midas whatever he wanted, a pleasing gift, but not one that the king would use at all well. Grant, he said, that whatever I touch will turn to gold. The god nodded and gave him the harm he asked for. Sorry he hadn't seen fit to request something better.
So what happens now?
Well, now he ends up kind of like he tests it out. He doesn't really believe, could this really be true?
Right.
And now he starts grabbing things. Right. And he's really excited at first, but then he quickly realizes this is going to be my downfall.
And in fact, this is kind of played for comedy, I would say.
Yes.
If I can read a little bit of the Ambrose translation
sure.
here. Then Liber nodded assent to the choice, bestowed the dangerous gift, etc. The Berecintian hero, that's Midas, departs content and happy in the evil thing, and tests the veracity of the promise by touching things in turn. And scarcely believing his eyes, from the lofty oak did not draw down a branch of green, the branch had turned to gold. He picks up a rock from the ground, the rock also paled with gold. He also touches a clod. At his powerful touch, the clod becomes a heavy mass. He broke off heads of Ceres, ripening grain. The harvest was golden. It's a pun, you see? It's a golden harvest.
Yes, I got it.
I like a good pun, don't you?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. And then then he goes on, he picks an apple.
Yes.
That turns to
Read
gold.
some of the Lombardo,
Sure.
if
It
you
says,
would, please.
he picked an apple from a tree. You would think that it came from the Garden of the Hesperides.
With their golden apples, right?
Yes. If he brushed his fingers on the soaring columns, the columns gleamed. I thought this was nice. When he washed his hands, the water could delude a Danae. So she's the one who was, impregnated by Zeus in the form of a golden rain.
Yes.
Right? So the water turns to gold. Mm-hmm. His mind could hardly contain his hopes, imagining that everything was gold. Deliriously happy, he sat down at a table on which his servants had set out an elaborate feast. Uh-oh.
Right.
Now, okay.
Piled high with food and not lacking for roasted grain. But then in truth, when his right hand had touched the gifts of Ceres, the gifts of Ceres grew hard. So this is how, frosted flakes were invented, I think.
Right. I'm thinking a pair of rubber gloves could have maybe...
Yes.
Could have been a...
Those they're not nylon. What are they? They're latex gloves.
Latex gloves.
Right.
Exactly.
Very thin, using for cleaning things up and so forth.
Right. Okay. Maybe not available in antiquity, but
probably not.
Some kind of ancient form like an oven mitt.
Would have been helpful.
Yes.
Would
right.
have been helpful. Or when his hungry teeth attempted to bite into the food, the teeth only pressed yellowed plates. So even his teeth have the golden touch.
Right. Maybe he was when he asked for the wish, he was thinking anything I touch with my hands.
Right.
But he again with the problem. Oh, you gotta specify your wish.
That's correct.
Right.
You have to ask the gods for very specific, rules of engagement, a triplicate form.
Yeah.
Right. Like buying a house.
I thought it was an interesting detail that Bacchus grants him his wish, but we get inside his head. He says, okay, you can have it, but he's disappointed
that he didn't ask for something wiser.
Yeah, exactly. Bacchus didn't say, "You want to rethink that?" And it was just, it's kind of that's sometimes kind of the rules of the game. Whatever comes out of your mouth, that's what you're going to get.
Yes. Can you read through some of the other things that he touched and how deleterious were the consequences?
Sure. He said, water mingled with wine. The wine of Bacchus, who gave him his gift, flowed into his mouth as molten gold. This was an alarming turn of events. Rich and yet wretched, he yearns to flee his wealth, and he hates what he asked for. No amount of food can relieve his hunger. His throat burns with thirst, and he is, through his own fault, tortured by gold. And lifting his hands and glistening arms to heaven, he cried, "Forgive me, Father Linnaeus, for I have sinned. Have mercy upon me and save me from this glittering curse." Now, this is interesting, is that if we compare this to the Arachne episode, this, of course, is our words that Arachne never speaks.
Right.
It's suggested that if Arachne had said, "You're right, you're the woman, Minerva,"
right,
everything would have been okay. Here, Midas breaks down and he asks for forgiveness.
Right.
Yep.
Now, the contrast here, a nice contrast I sometimes brought out when I taught myth at that former institution, is with the story of King Solomon in 1 Kings chapter 3, where the Lord appears to him in a dream and says, "Ask for me whatever you want me to give you."
All right.
And Solomon famously does not go with the deadly wish motif. Right. He asks for wisdom to govern God's people, and God says, as a consequence of your, wisdom in asking for the right thing, I'm also going to make you wealthy.
Right.
But I'm going to give you the wisdom that you asked for.
That's interesting, but it's also interesting that in the story of Solomon, his tremendous wealth becomes kind of part of his own downfall.
It does,
right?
yes. It leads him to idolatry with the women of the nations that he takes as his wives and concubines.
Yeah.
So how does Midas get out of this terrible fix?
I think it's because he breaks down and he says, I did something terrible and forgive me. And in Lombardo's translation, the next line is, "The gods are kind," which maybe
not all of them,
not all of them, and not all the time.
No,
but it says because he confessed his sin, Bacchus restored to him what he was before and rescinded the pledged gift.
Yes. So what does he do then? He has to go and wash off some of the golden touch. And where does he go? He
goes to the river, which is it comes to be called Xanthus.
That's correct.
The Yellow River.
The Yellow River that features very prominently in Herodotus's history.
Right.
The war between the Greeks and the Persians, and it's famous for its gold.
Yes.
So we have yet another etiology.
Right.
This is why the river is so laden with gold.
Yeah. So you start to see kind of a rhythm and almost a formula to these stories, right? It's human makes a terrible mistake. Sometimes they're punished in a very clever kind of way. In this case, Midas escapes that judgment. And then there's kind of and this is why this mountain looks this way. Or this is why spiders are the way they are.
Which is kind of an odd ending in some ways, to turn it in an etiological direction.
Do you find it kind of an anticlimax in some way?
No, it's just unexpected. We're I think we're expecting some really strong moral point to be made.
Yeah.
But the moral point is more contained in the narrative itself.
Yeah.
Ovid doesn't have to, at the end, say, and so you should be careful what you ask for.
Right.
That would be a little trite.
Yes.
He goes in another direction.
Yeah.
So here's Ambrose. The king approached the ordered water. The golden touch imbued the river and receded from the human body into the stream. But even now, from the seeds received from the ancient vein, the fields are hard and pale with clods made wet by gold.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm coming more and more to appreciate Ambrose. I think, by and large, I'm more of a Lombardo guy.
Well, we've been trumpeting Lombardo all through the translation and the series on the Aeneid.
Right, but there's a poetic finesse in Ambrose that I really like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the story goes on from here, and we're going to have to leave Ovid, I think, and wrap up our episode.
Yeah.
But the story goes on, and Midas becomes a judge in a musical contest.
Yes.
Between Pan and Apollo.
That's right.
And that's a great story, which includes some asinine behavior at the end.
Indeed.
Yeah, but
that will be a tale for another episode.
Another episode.
Yeah. So, Dave, we got to get out of here.
Indeed.
We're up against it. Before we do, tell us a little bit about the Moss Method, LLPSI. What's going on there?
Sure. So just this morning, we met for our weekly Moffus hours.
Nice.
Now, they have been somewhat interrupted because of my travel schedule, but we're back on track.
Excellent.
We met for an hour. We read from some Greek the story of Penelope and Odysseus, an adapted prose version for students. Just signed up some more students this week for the Greek course.
Great.
Go to mossmethod.com. Check out my course. It's got 4 modules. It's a highly carefully, another adverb kind of thing, put together with precision and diligence, I hope. It will take you from neophyte to
erudite.
Yes, you will learn a lot of Greek. Now, as I like to say, there may be better programs, but I believe the combination of the cost and the level of expertise and thoroughness is pretty much unmatched.
Indeed. And if they go to mossmethod.com, there's lots of free videos they can check out, and so you can jump in with a good idea of kind of what you're in for.
That's correct. And it's asynchronous, so you can start anytime.
Fantastic.
Self-paced, expert, accessible.
Good.
I also have the Latin program, latinperdiem.com/LLPSI.
Yes.
Right. So this is Hans Orberg's Lingua Latina per se illustrata. Signed up a student just this morning. It's another excellent program, I believe, where I'm teaching 4 students, and you get to watch the 33 videos plus the 25 accessory videos plus audio recordings and tests and quizzes and lots of materials. And once a week, you meet with me for an office hour.
So both of these programs, they have direct access to you.
That's correct, not just a flunky or a lackey.
Fantastic.
And that's at latinperdiem.com. So, Jeff, whom do we need to thank?
As always, Mishka, our engineer, our editor, who turns these things around so quickly and so professionally. So can't thank her enough. How about who are these blistering guitarists that we're hearing?
Yeah,
here?
so we got Scott Van Zen, who
Yes.
plays the intro and the outro music from a song called, I don't think I've ever mentioned this on the air, Stay By My Side.
All right.
Is the name of the song.
Nice.
Ken composed the drums and the bass and such and plays the rhythm guitar. Scott plays the lead guitar with all that whittly diddly.
Yeah.
That's so nice. Ken plays the bumper music for the ads, and very generous, very grateful for their contribution.
What a couple of talented dudes. Man.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And so, hey, again, a reminder, if you want a shout out, we'd love to hear from you. If you got questions, ideas for an episode, don't hesitate to drop us a note. You can write to Dave at adnauseam.com. Don't forget that V.
Or Jeff at adnauseam.com. Do not forget the V in the email address.
Yes. Go to adnauseam.com. Check out our Lurch with Merch section.
Pick up a t-shirt, a hat, a mug. We got a lot of stuff there, a little bit of which trickles back to us.
Yeah.
And the proceeds, and helps keep this podcast afloat.
Yes. Now, Dave, next week, we did not talk about this, but
Nope.
how would you feel about doing...
I'm against it.
Your use your illusion too.
Oh,
week.
you mean the pop culture,
Yes.
the pop music.
Right.
That's right in your wheelhouse, as they say. Yeah, I'm up for it.
All right, let's do that.
We got a lot of strikes when we tried to put that thing on YouTube.
That's right. Exactly. Right.
But we're bringing this music to potentially a new audience.
Exactly.
And this is really where you are in your element, and I just kind of sit back and kind of fire pot shots at various.
You're in your wheelhouse doing that.
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna go with Use Your Illusion Part 2.
Yes.
Episode 124, and I believe, Jeff, you have our gustatory parting shot.
Yes, this comes from someone I've never heard of, but I love the name, Louis Grizzard.
I have read one of his books.
Oh, really?
Yeah, as it turns out, a long time ago. He's a Southern writer.
Okay.
He writes about travel and food, just kind of Americana.
Gotcha.
It's kind of nice.
Yeah,
I don't think I'd read one of his books now, probably, but I really enjoyed it at the time.
Okay. Well, he says, I love this, and I agree wholeheartedly. He says, never order barbecue in a place that also serves quiche.
Good advice.
Very good advice. Thanks for listening.